Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tim here again for Droid Life. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today we are continuing our coverage of the Galaxy S10 Plus. As you can see, this is a follow-up kind of to Kellen's Galaxy S10e video in which he showed you the first 10 things you should do with that device. And because these devices are just a little bit different, you know, that ultrasonic fingerprint reader, 3 rear-facing cameras, etc., we have a video dedicated to this, the Galaxy S10 and the S10 Plus, because they are a bit different. So we've got 10 things that you're going to want to do when you're first setting up this device and afterwards, and we're just going to dive right into it because I've been really enjoying this phone and I want you all to enjoy it just as much as I have. And so to do that, I'm going to give you 10 things to do. So let's dive right into it. First one, of course, is all about that security. Because it has the fingerprint readers, the facial recognition, etc. We're just going to dive right in here, make sure all of that is set up. That way the security of the device is good and the way you're unlocking it is good and all that, and everything is smooth. So under the settings menu here, and then under the dedicated menu for biometrics and security, we're going to tap on that. So first thing, of course, you can set up your facial recognition, but because it's got that ultrasonic and it's so much fun to use, I go in here, I set up that first initial thumbprint, my right thumb, when I'm setting up the device, but then I'll always go in here and add a secondary finger. Maybe the thumb isn't working, or the device is sitting on the table that way and I want to reach over and unlock with my right index. I can do that. So I've got my right thumb set up, I've got my right index set up, but then so typically when these are brand new fingerprints inside of the phone, it's just going to say fingerprint 1, fingerprint 2. What you can do is you can customize the name. Pro tip, so right thumb, right index. That way if one is being finicky, you'll know exactly which one you'll need to redo and replace. So I always recommend set up a couple of fingerprints and then name them. Please name them. So right under here, you're going to notice fingerprint unlock the phone with your fingerprints. Of course, you're going to want that on, but then also show icon when screen is off. So for example, the display can be off, always on display is there, but then I can just set my thumb there and the phone's going to unlock. I don't actually need to go ahead and double tap on anything to wake the display and then unlock. The display can just be completely off with always on display going. I just press my thumb there and it's going to unlock. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Heading on, I want to go back into biometrics and show off facial recognition. So when this is all lined up and working perfectly, of course you're going to want to have face unlock enabled. And then you've got the stay on lock screen. So when you unlock with facial recognition, stay on the lock screen until you swipe. That's just an extra added layer of privacy. So that way, when you unlock the device, you'll have to swipe through again, and the phone isn't going to just unlock to whatever you were looking at last. It's just a little added privacy. You have faster recognition, which is fine, except it does reduce the security. Increases the possibility of a video or image being incorrectly recognized as your face. So at least Samsung warns you about it. I use it because I don't know, I don't really get out too much, so I'm not too concerned about people stealing my phone, but you can either enable that, disable that. It really depends. It may just take, an extra split second to unlock your device, however you are being more secure. So not a bad thing. Brighten Screen, so it's going to increase screen brightness. Say if you're in a dark setting, it's trying to use that facial recognition, it's going to brighten up the screen a little bit. That way it can make sure that it's actually your face that it's seen, etc. So can't go wrong with setting up your biometrics and security. It's just a good thing to have. And a part of biometrics and security, of course, is the lock screen. So if we head back in the settings menu, you of course have a dedicated menu all for lock screen settings. And the big one on this one, of course, for us is always on display. Out of the box, it's going to be off. So of course, with a quick little toggle, it's on. But then you can dive deeper in and customize certain features of the always on display. So you've got your display mode for show always. Show is scheduled, so at a certain time of day or night, it'll turn on. A tap to show, I just show always. I don't care if it's going to hit my battery. It's a 4100 milliamp hour battery. I should be able to have it on whenever I want. So I just do that. Screen orientation, I set for portrait. You can show music information when music is playing on the device itself, not ambient, but on the device itself. You'll see music information. You can swipe down on that, play with it, change tracks, do all that good stuff. Auto brightness, so if it's in a dark environment, the screen is going to know to dim itself a little bit. That way you're not blinded by the always on display. And then of course, there are ways to actually sort of tweak that information as well. So you've got your clock style, And so under AlwaysOn Display, you can change up the look. I've got sort of a gradient going on here with that big main number, 2 smaller digits, all that. But so you can change all that. There's a lot of different looks that you can tweak with, all that fun stuff. There's a little bunny, or you can add your own image, a dedicated calendar, all that good stuff. So there's a whole lot of different looks that you can achieve. If that's what you want to do, of course, you can just go with a straight white like Kellen does and be totally vanilla. That's totally fine. So moving out of the lock screen, I want to talk more about customization in general. So home screen customization, all that, make the phone yours. So of course, when you're on the home screen, to change up the settings for that, you can just give it a little pinch. You're going to be able to change your wallpaper, change up your theme. This is where you're going to access all of your widgets. And then of course, you have dedicated home screen settings. In here, you can change up the grid. So first, you can change the home screen layout itself if you want an app drawer or not. Entirely up to you. No judgment if you don't want an app drawer. Even though, as the Android purist I am, I gotta have an app drawer. I can't do folders. I'm sorry. Home screen grid, I go with a 5x5. It makes my icons a little bit smaller. Out of the box, I believe it's a 4x6 or maybe even a 4x5. But either way, the icons are a bit bigger. So I go with a 5x5. I find that's nice. I can have my row of 5 icons, and it just seems to work for me. You have your app screen grid, of course, so you can change up how sort of big those icons are depending on how big your grid is. And then I want to go back in there, and then also you have your app icon badges, so that's going to show notifications. When a notification for a particular app, you'll see those badges. And then heading back out onto the home screen, got to talk about system toggles. So you have, of course, all these toggles, all these different things. When I first brought this phone out of the box, there was a dedicated 3 pages of system toggles. For me, that's a little too much. So, oops, not hitting the gear. You're actually heading down, going into there. Oh, come on. I'm failing. So you've got your system toggles. You can tap on the 3 dots, go into button order. And so with a long press, you can change up to the system toggles that you use most often. So of course, I toggle on and off my Wi-Fi, my sound, my flashlight, Bluetooth, etc. when I'm using my buds, all that good stuff. Wireless power share, you can change all of that. And of course, you can take things away by dragging up or bringing them back in. As you can see, there's a lot of system toggles to choose from. I didn't need more than half of those things. So I set up the stuff that I need most often. You hit done, and you're good to go. Out of the box, this brightness slider is not in a good spot. So you hit that little arrow. I'll show you again. So this little arrow right under here, you tap on that, and of course you can change your brightness, of course, and then enable and disable adaptive brightness. But I always select show control on top. So out of the box, you have to give it like a double swipe. Not only a double swipe, but a 1-2 swipe, and then it's all the way down here. And for me, I guess if you're using with your right hand, one hand, it's not too bad. But personally, I like to control on top. That way, when I just give it a single swipe, I can access my brightness slider and just have that all ready to go. So one of those things that just out of the box, I do. So highly recommend. Also, if you give it a pinch, you're going to notice that you can enable and disable Bixby Home from this section. So when it's enabled out of the box, you're going to see Bixby Home right here. For me personally, not a huge fan of Bixby, so I immediately go over there, disable that. That way I don't have to worry about Bixby. And of course, speaking of Bixby, this phone does have a dedicated Bixby button here on the left side. So out of the box, you're going to give it a single press, and it's going to say, hey, set up Bixby, all that good stuff. So what I do is I go in there, I hit on the settings button for Bixby, go into the settings menu. If you scroll down a little bit, you're going to see Bixby Key. And so with this, you can customize what happens when you give the button a single press or a double press. So I have a double press to open Bixby because I don't want to accidentally open Bixby all too often. And now I'm using a third-party application called Bix Assist. I think it's on Google Play for $1. I'll leave a link in the description below. But so what happens when I give it a single press is I open Google Assistant. Now, Samsung does not allow this out of the box. That's why I have to use a third-party application to do it. But it's worth $1 to me. So I just give it one tap and I can open Google Assistant, but of course I can give it that double tap and still open up Bixby if I want to get in there. To do that, all I do is I go down into Bixby Key. When I have that app installed, Bix Assist, I just give that a press, open app, and I can choose any application I want to. But when you have Bix Assist, shameless plug, installed, then I can just have that enabled and then just give it one press and open up Google Assistant. Super helpful for me. Again, I'll leave a link down in the description below. And next I want to talk about the camera. So 3 rear-facing cameras, 1 standard lens, 1 wide lens, and then 1 ultra-wide lens. And what's nice is that Samsung has a few changes, at least for software-wise, in these cameras, and there's a couple of things I definitely want to talk about. So, of course, you've got your standard mode, just your standard RGB mode, and you can toggle between the ultra-wide, the wide, the standard, the telephoto. And then, if we go into, or what this button right here, it's a very important button. So right here you have a scene optimizer button, and so when that is off, you won't be able to access Samsung's night mode, essentially, which is sort of trying to be like the Pixel 3's night sight, but it's not quite as good. So down here, if you go into the settings menu real quick, and I'll show you here, you have Scene Optimizer. And so under Scene Optimizer is where you're going to find Bright Night. However, if you do not have the Scene Optimizer enabled, you'll never see Bright Night. And that, I think, is why it's the critical flaw of the feature, because the night sight, or the bright night, excuse me, isn't a dedicated setting inside of the camera menu, which is kind of unfortunate. I think Samsung may be able to change that down the road. But there's other things you can do with the Scene Optimizer. And so you have a document scanner and a Starburst, which automatically adds a Starburst flare to light sources when you're in a dark environment, which is totally fine. But so for bright night, when that is enabled, when you're inside of it, and it's set right there, you'll see it's blue. In a dark environment, the phone is going to automatically recognize that it's a bright set or a dark setting, and so it's going to take a burst of shots and then combine those into a single photo. So definitely good to have, except you just have to make sure it's enabled out of there in the little box. So there's a quick little toggle for it, which is totally fine to use. But then also there's things like changing up the aspect ratio. If you want to use that full screen, you just hit that button. You can go to a 1x1, which is perfect for Instagram, and 9x16. I leave it on the 3x4. It just makes life a bit easier for me. But then also if we go back into the settings here, so again, Scene Optimizer, shot suggestions, etc. Motion photos, I leave that disabled just because I don't need any video leading up to a shot. Rear video size, I have mine set to full HD. Front video size, video stabilization, of course you want that. I use grid lines, a 3x3, works fine for me when I'm leveling out a shot. But then the quick launch, so when that is enabled, you just give the power button a quick little double press, and that's going to quickly open up the camera here. A little double press, camera open, boom. There is also one, so there is I just have to find it here. So a shot suggestion. So when that is enabled, and say you're trying to line up a shot, just have to make sure that's on. The phone itself is going to tell you like, hey, this shot is lined up pretty well. It's going to recommend certain angles for you. I haven't found it to be the most incredible thing yet, and it'll automatically take the shot when it thinks that something is lined up perfectly. So something to keep in mind, something to play with. And there's a lot of changes to the cameras. There's a lot to learn in there, but just get out, shoot, and have some fun. Next, of course, we have to talk about display settings. With this large, gorgeous display, we're going to want to make it look as good as possible. So, of course, if we head into the settings menu, go under display, you can change your brightness, adaptive brightness, blue light filter, etc. So let's talk about the blue light, the navigation bar, and a few of the screen modes. So that blue light, that's going to allow you to have more eye comfortability later in the evening. So, of course, I have that set on a custom schedule, but you can have it sunrise to sunset. It's going to need location access for that. But let's say if it was turned on, you're going to get that nice amber tone. Really helps the eyes and just kind of puts you in that little sleepy mood later at the nighttime. I have mine just turns on at 10, ends at 8 the next morning. That seems to work just fine for me, but of course you can change that opacity, make it even more of that amber hue, and really crank it up there if you want. So I just had that on a custom schedule. Highly recommended, of course. Going down a little bit, night mode. So, yep, One UI, Android Pie on this Samsung phone. Night mode. Absolutely love it. It's going to black out that entire UI and a few of the system applications as well. Not only can it help, with your battery and all that good stuff, but it just, I think it looks pretty darn good. So you can have that also set on a schedule. I actually just run that 24/7. So I turn it on, forget about it. I think it looks awesome. Samsung did a really good job using their night mode. Screen modes, I have mine set to vivid. There's also a more natural look. But I like that color pop and that heavy amount of saturation. Then, of course, you can change the white balance and then even change the RGB values for red, green, blue, RGB. So you can definitely change that up however much you want. I have mine set to vivid. Works just fine for me when I'm looking through Instagram or on Facebook, Twitter, a bunch of social media, etc. Looks fine. So I have mine set to vivid. And then, of course, you can change up your screen resolution on the S10 and S10 Plus. The 10e, of course, it maxes out at 1080, but on this one, you can go all the way to WQHD 3040 by 1440, or you can scale it back to Full HD Plus or HD Plus, max of 1520 by 720. But again, out of the box, I like my crispy content, so I've got mine set to WQHD. You can just hit either one, then just hit accept or apply, and you're good to go. Back into the settings menu, of course, we have a dedicated section for advanced features. These are a bunch of features that don't necessarily fit into another category. So under here we have our Bixby routines, which, again, not a huge Bixby guy, but then you can change up your Bixby Key settings in here as well. Smart pop-up view, smart capture, direct share, reduce animations, which Kellen seems to like. So if you do that, let's say if it's off, you're going to notice that kind of fade in, fade out. But then when we reduce, just more of a dissolved, it does kind of help in terms of making the phone feel a bit snappier. But I actually like my animation, so I'm fine with it. Under motions and gestures, a lot of these, thankfully, are self-explanatory, and they give you little descriptions. But lift to wake, double tap to wake on that display. Smart stay, the phone is going to recognize when you're looking at it, and then just stay on. Easy mute, one-handed mode, all that good stuff is all inside of motions and gestures, so highly recommend you go into there under advanced features, enable what you want, disable what you don't want, etc. Game launcher, when you first launch a game on this phone, it's going to automatically walk you through game launcher if you want that on or not. Going down here, back into the notifications. So right under sounds and vibration, you got notifications. So under here, the big one for me, do not disturb. So that's another one. I just set up a schedule for it. It turns on Monday through Friday at 10:30, turns off at 7:50 the next day. So when it's on, of course, all your notifications are going to disappear, but you can customize that under here, which days you want it, what time, etc., and then what's going to happen. So you can hide notifications, hide app badges, hide basically everything that has to do with notifications on the phone, or you can kind of tweak that if you want a few things to get through, which is totally fine. You're expecting an important message, etc., a phone call. You can allow exceptions and just all tweak that however you need to. Also under notifications is status bar. So with status bar out of the box, in the notification bar, it's only going to show your 3 most recent app notifications. I go to all notifications, then of course you can have a battery percentage, etc. I'm getting low, but I'm testing the battery, so I have a good excuse. So I go to all notifications. That way, sure, my notification bar may get a little bit messy, but I'm not going to miss something. So that's important to me. If we go back down into sounds and vibration, and then under advanced sound settings, and then sound quality and effects, is where you're going to find your Dolby Atmos settings, which are pretty important if you use nice headphones or anything like that. But then also, you're going to find your equalizer. And of course, I got mine set to rock, because I rock out, higher lows, higher highs, and sort of a balanced mid-section. But then, of course, you can just set a custom EQ. Looks like there's 10 bands or so, 8 bands maybe. There's a few bands to tweak, but I just go rock. Works just fine for me. But then, of course, you can enable your Dolby Atmos. You can set a predetermined kind of effect that you want for that Dolby Atmos, movie, music, voice, etc., and kind of focus on a particular trait that you want. Adapt sound. pretty cool. I have it under default, but you can adapt the sound based on your age. So if you're under 30 years old, and then you can tweak that however much you want, and then it's going to sort of give you a sound preference for that, whether a soft or a clear, and then you can preview all of that. I'm about to turn 30 here tomorrow, actually, on March 11th. So maybe I'm going to need to go to that 30 to 60, although 30 to 60 is kind of a wide range, don't you think? Kind of make me feel older than I actually feel. Anyway, I'm going to keep under 30 because I feel like I can hear just fine. So that's under Adapt Sound, just being able to customize the sound however you need it to be. And then the last but not least, of course, back out straight into the settings menu. Get to know the battery of this phone, 4100 milliamp hour, at least on the Galaxy S10 Plus. Under device care, you're going to see settings for battery, storage, memory, and security. So under battery, and then you can, of course, check your battery usage and all that good stuff by tapping on that button. But if we back out of there, hit on the 3 dots, settings button, notifications for when an app is being used in the background that's taking up a lot of battery. You can enable or disable adaptive battery. Put unused apps to sleep. So what's interesting is that you can tweak this a bit for the system to be a bit more aggressive in terms of putting applications to sleep. Out of the box, it comes at 3 days, but you can be more aggressive, 1 or 2 days, or be less aggressive, all the way to 7 days. So it really depends on how you want the phone to respond in terms of putting apps to sleep. So good to have. Auto disable unused apps. So if an app hasn't been used in 30 days, automatically gets disabled. Kind of a nice touch. And then, of course, enabling and disabling fast charging. I think you're just going to want to keep that on out of the box. And last, of course, but not least, feel free to expand your storage using the micro SD card slot there on top. So, whole lot of stuff to do. If you want a few more tips and tricks that maybe I didn't cover, Kellen, again, has a Galaxy S10e walkthrough. It's all the same software. Just a few features might be different because there are different things on the phones. I will give a link to that video right here, and feel free to watch that. Check it out. If you have any questions for the Galaxy S10 Plus, full reviews coming, all that good stuff. And until then, we are Droid Life. Peace.